Greetings, MechWarriors, and welcome to devlog number 12. I'm Tina, Community Manager at PGI, and I'm gathered here with Viona, our level artist, and Ryan, our technical artist. Hello.
Hi.
Hi. The River City is almost complete.
Yes.
And it's
almost.
looking gorgeous. And how did you approach the visual beautification on it?
The first three things that we tackled right away, just because it is major and it's the big things that you do see in the level, is the terrain level of details. This time around, we actually modeled some geometry that we crashed into the cliff walls. We added some grass on the ground just to bring the level of details that much more higher when you view it up close. And then the second is we put way more trees than we did before, and they're also breakable now. So, and then the third one is Dennis spent a long time trying to put more buildings in the city to make it look and feel more claustrophobic. So that provides much better covers to improve performance.
And also looks way better.
Yes.
Obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, River City. It was a great opportunity to work on it. We got to move away from just the city core bound by basically a static wall. You know, we've basically made a little forest area behind the whole thing. So we've got some cool little roads that I made, just basically snaking the whole outer shell of the level. You know, we've got the dropships coming in, which is awesome, and you know, it's really unique. It's really exciting. It's a nice blend between natural and metropolitan kind of look to the level.
Like Vancouver, right?
Yeah, a little bit like Vancouver.
For sure. Yeah,
so,
for sure.
Yeah, I got the North Shore basically, and we got the downtown core, and
the Stanley Park.
Yeah, it's right.
Yeah, for sure.
Stanley Park,
Yeah.
and the beachfront, everything else.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
you know, surf in the morning and go skiing in the afternoon.
So how was the process different from the other levels?
Some things we did differently this time. We really took the time to actually spend quite a bit of time for me to go in there and hand paint the terrain details and the color variations. So when you see it up close, you see just much more details than what it used to be before. And we also make new assets that are way more optimized than they were originally. So that's why we could have 10 times more than what we had before, and that's why we have a city that feels more like a city because of the different variations of assets that are in there.
Yeah, no, it's great being able to do those little rooftop gardens and stuff like that you couldn't do before because you're limited by performance, right? So those bigger buildings, you get a chance, you know, not only does it block the line of sight for gameplay, which is great, you know, but you're also blocking the line of sight for performance reasons, right? We were able to, essentially the building goes up, and then anything behind the building we don't have to render anymore, right? So the performance goes up quite exponentially, right? When you've got bigger buildings and stuff like that, so you can just cram it full of way more stuff, which is quite nice.
Yeah.
And you guys are planning to improve other maps in the
Oh,
future.
Yeah, for sure. Slowly but surely, gradually,
Some of the earlier maps we're going to start with. The big one, obviously, is Forest Colony. I don't know if it's been announced yet, but Forest Colony, we're going to be redoing that. So, you know, that map was basically made for 8 versus 8, right? So it's the size of a postage stamp. We're basically going to take that map and, I don't know, quadruple or quintuple the size. Like, it's going to be way bigger, right? So, you know, that means more trees, you know, more ocean fighting, more, you know, mountain fighting. It's going to be great. That's going to be a real fun one to work on, right? And not only that, but the time of day improvements and stuff. I know a lot of people have issues with the super dark forest colony that we've got in there right now. That's going to, you know, go away, and we're going to have the full cycle. So we're going to get some dark areas, we're going to get some light areas. So basically, depending on when you spawn in, you're going to get the opportunity to play a whole wide range of different maps, basically.
And add on that more trees that are breakable. So imagine having a much fuller forest level, and then you knock down all the trees. It's going to be really cool.
Yeah, with a name like Forest Colony, you kind of expect that, right? And you look at the current one, and it's kind of sparse. So we're gonna bump that up. It's gonna be much better.
Yeah, stay tuned.
The one that you're most looking forward to work on, right?
It's the one that I'm personally very excited to work on. So I'm gonna try to not give anything away right now, but then the players are gonna be for a very big surprise.
Yeah, I mean, Forest Colony is a great one. There's quite a few maps, obviously, we've got in rotation now, so it's hard to pick favorite one to redo, but yeah, Forest Colony is definitely in the top 3. Another one, obviously, Alpine Peaks.
For sure, yeah.
For such a big map, there's not all that much going on in Alpine Peaks,
yes.
Especially art-wise, right? So it's nice to be able to bump that one up as well. I'd probably say Alpine's, the one I'm looking forward to as well.
I would second you on that, yeah.
So, as far as trees go, they look fuller now. Can you describe a bit of how they look?
Yes, trees. In the past, what we did whenever we make vegetations is we rely too much heavily on deriving the texture image based on another image. So that resulted on the normal map not interact correctly with the lighting. So all this time around, I took the time to actually model the texture, bake the diffuse, bake the normal map, bake the occlusions. And also what we did before, the alpha planes where you apply the leaf textures on had too much tessellations, so we couldn't really put too many alpha planes on the tree, so the tree looked a little sparse. So, and this time around, because the alpha planes that we use is much more simpler, and there are only 2 triangle counts, so that resulted in us being able to put a lot more alpha planes on the tree, and the tree looked much fuller now.
Yeah, I mean, for those of you who do not have a computer science degree, alpha planes basically are how you can see through an object. So basically what Viona is saying is that the more cards stacked up on top of each other, the poorer it renders. So the last time we went about making trees, we put tons and tons of polygons in there, and the result wasn't very good. So instead, this time what we did is we were a bit more conservative with the polygons, but we placed them in a bit more of a intelligent and meaningful way. So by doing this, we were able to get the trees looking a lot fuller, but without hurting performance and without having artifacts flickering and other such things. So also making the texture, rather than using a photo source, basically just going in and taking a photo of a tree and painting around it and plopping it in the game, we actually went in and we modeled each individual leaf and each individual branch, right? So the result is much better because the game engine can understand that a lot better than just taking a photo. It doesn't know what's going forward, it's going backwards, everything else. Whereas with modeling it in, you can actually see, or the computer can see the directions and stuff like that, so the lighting can interact with it more appropriately.
Yeah, so the trees have a lot more depth.
That's right, yeah. And better shadows, better everything. It just, they look better.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that in the level we can add more trees now. Why is that?
Yeah, well, adding more trees, 3 different big reasons. The first one, obviously, this being 2015 rather than 2012, we're able to push more trees because, simply put, people have better computers, right? You know, a game made for the Xbox 360 in 2012 now gets to run on an Xbox One style specs, right? Obviously, it's PC. It's a little different, but that's basically the core of the argument there. The other reason why is because we've kind of developed these trees to be a lot more efficient, right? As Viona said earlier, less polygons, less overdraw, less, you know, items stacked on top of each other, so they are a bit more efficient. And lastly, River City, the update has got more buildings, more mountains and stuff like that over, you know, blocking views and stuff like that. So we can paint some trees here, have a mountain come in, paint more trees on the other side, and basically the computer doesn't have to render stuff on the other side of the mountain or the other stuff on the side of the building and stuff like that. So it can basically draw them a lot more efficiently.
Yeah, for sure.
So between those, you know, 3 reasons, it's stuff in there.
On top of that, in the past, we did have some bugs where when you instance an object, the draw calls go up higher than they should be. So this time around, working closely with the engineers, they were able to find a fix. Yeah. So instancing a tree, the draw calls don't go that high. So that's why when we put 10 times more, the performance still very good.
Yeah. Yeah, basically what happens is you've got a tree here and a tree here. Well, the computer just looks at the first tree and goes, okay, well, the second tree is basically the same, so we'll put that second tree in there for almost no cost whatsoever, right? And so we kind of optimize that. We've always been doing that, but we've gotten a lot better at it. Yes. We've kind of made some tweaks and stuff like that, so it's a lot faster. So
And now when you walk into trees, they fall down. They don't go through them, right?
That's our big one. Obviously, that's one of those features that we wanted to do from the very beginning. We actually had kind of a working version as early as GDC 2012, but for various reasons, mainly the network, we were forced to pull that feature out. But yeah, with the new River City, we've got trees that can be knocked down, and that spawns across the network. And so basically, if Fiona's playing in a spider and knocks it down, I'm piloting a Atlas, it's going to be knocked down on my screen as well, which is,
I see.
very, very important.
So it works on the same on other machines.
It does, yeah. So with 99.9999% reliability, right? It's so we'll get to why it's not 100 in a bit, but yeah, that's.
And do they block shots?
Well, they'll knock down if you shoot them with a ballistic. So basically, they won't block shots. Basically, if you shoot at it, your missile or your AC-20 or your PPC will obliterate the tree. It'll knock it right down. The only thing that doesn't knock it down is a laser, a flamer, or a machine gun. And the reason for all of this is basically networking again, right? As I alluded to earlier, we can't be 100% sure that the tree is knocked down on both machines. So with that in mind, we don't want to mess up anything with hit detection or anything like that. It's not worth it, right? So basically, we're making an assumption that it's knocked down, but we can't be sure. And because we can't be sure, we can't have them blocking shots. And there's other reasons too, gameplay and stuff like that. We don't want players to sit in a forest and go, okay, I'm basically invulnerable, right? It's a little ridiculous. You think about it. You're shooting, 100 tons of ammo at some mech and it's not going to die because it's hiding in a forest. That's kind of silly, right? So, an AC-20 will knock it down, and a laser, it'll kind of burn up and stuff like that, but it'll shoot through it. So,
So you'll see it flaming.
It does the same thing as if you shoot a building, right? Sparks, smoke, fire, the usual, right?
I see.
Cool. Although you can't set them up on fire, can you?
No, not yet. That's kind of a pipe dream of our engineers and the art department. There's a little bit of work to do before it gets to that point. So
Can players interact with fallen trees?
No, again, the networking thing basically prevents us from, basically as soon as the tree is knocked down, it's a fire and forget. It turns into a particle. The network has no idea what happens to it afterwards, right? So again, it's one of those optimizations that we do to prevent rubber banding, latency, hit registration errors and stuff like that. So yeah, once it's done, it's done. It looks cool on your screen, but that's about it.
So also now in the River City, you can scrape against other buildings and rocks, right?
Basically the standard thing that you see, you're running against a building or whatever, and you get basically some small sparks and smoke and stuff like that. It doesn't affect gameplay whatsoever, but it looks cool. Who doesn't like stuff like that, right?
I was really impressed. It's like,
it's cool.
It's like
it's very cool. Sorry, low spec users who you get that sacrifice. Unfortunately, we can't really afford that on low spec, but medium and above, you'll see something.
And that doesn't affect performance?
No, not too terribly much. No, it's pretty cheap, so it's just a couple sparks and stuff like that. So
it's very cool.
Pretty easy.
So the trees falling down right now, they're only in River City. There's obviously plans to have them in other maps in the future, right?
For sure. Like I said, all the other maps will get the updates slowly and gradually, but every other map will have the same treatment as River City for sure. I mean, some of the maps obviously don't have trees, but for anyone that does have trees, we're going to try and get that in as soon as possible. We've got a tool now. I wrote a little tool that basically goes in and takes our old trees, converts them to new trees. So as far as our job is concerned, it's just a click of a button. The only thing is we have to QA it to make sure that nothing kind of silly happens, right? But I mean, the users can expect that within 1 or 2 patches, right? So.
And you plan to add lots more everywhere in other maps.
For sure. The script that Ryan wrote is basically allow me to paint with a brush where the trees are. And then with a click of a button, they will convert them into breakable trees. So
that's fun.
Speeds up our development quite a bit.
Very much so, yes.
Great. And in the future, are you planning to have any more destructible, breakable?
For sure. Anything small that you think you can destruct, we are going to try our best.
Cars.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So basically, a general rule of thumb is if you think your mech can pick it up with one hand, it's going to be destructible, right? Anything that you can walk through, will destroy it. So any little trees, shrubs, bus stops, light posts, antennas, cars. That's the big one. You know, like everyone's excited to, you know, crush some cars, right? So unfortunately, some of that stuff is not quite ready yet. So River City, it's going to be mainly limited to trees and lampposts and antennas. But the car stuff is all going to come very shortly, right? And we'll have some effects to go with that. You step on a car, it kind of explodes, you know, the typical thing that you see in the average movie or video game, as everybody wants. So that's right.
Yeah. There's actually one more thing that is breakable in River City: the little statues in front of the Citadel.
So after a long hiatus, the hated government building statues, you know, the ones in the little semicircle there that everybody used to get stuck on. Well, you don't get stuck on them anymore. You just
knock them down.
That's a fun surprise.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's quite exciting. So.
So let's talk about terrain.
Yes, terrain.
There's so much more details now.
Yes, it is, because I actually took the time to do it properly. It took a little longer than before. But usually what happened before is we would get a terrain that's already baked with texture from THAAD that's been run through Volt Machine, which looks great when you view it from a far distance, but then when you get close to it, there's really no detail to it. So we make the textures a much higher resolutions, we make a much better normal map, and then whenever we can, we add parallax mapping to add some more depth to the texture so it has a more 3D look. And then so I would pretty much start from a small section, paint the detail, and then add on top of that a color variations to kind of break up the details. And then on top of that, we got much more grass to cover the ground. So that gives it a much more natural look. And also we have some crashed geometry into the cliff walls. So when you view it from far away, the silhouette of the cliff walls hold much better shape. And so it's kind of like layering details on top of details, and then all of a sudden you get a much higher quality terrain.
Yeah, exactly. You kind of get that boulder field look rather than sand dunes, right? So a lot of the levels that are, you know, held up mainly by terrain kind of look like they're all made out of a very fine sand, whereas the new River City and henceforth some of the new maps will get a lot more detail with, you know, big boulders and stuff like that to make it feel like a big boulder field or something like that, you know, breaks up the horizon line and just adds a lot more detail. So big improvement.
Very big.
And when you come up with these levels or when you create sort of these levels, how much concept art do you have?
We do have some concept art from Dennis, although it's usually very rough. We try to keep it very rough because no concept is ever final. Some things grow organically as we progress, so we make some adjustments as necessary. But Dennis would usually get the concept done like a week or two before we start going into the level, and then he would do some visual targets, and then he would also gather some reference images from real life. And then on top of that, I would gather my own references and then kind of add my own pizzazz to the level.
What kind of references do you get? What inspires you the most in terms of that?
Every level is different, you know. Say for example, Green Portico, the references is quite specific. It's derived from the bismuth rocks. And then with Vitric Forge, the reference images come from the obsidian, but in the colors of the red opal gemstone. But for example, other levels like Viridian Bog, it's more a natural look. It's a big sinkhole, very humid, lots of overgrown. So there's no really specific place that we draw the inspiration from. So every level has a different treatment.
So another function we'll be having is the dynamic time of day.
Yeah, that's a big one. River City is obviously one of, or it is our first map to have a full 24-hour cycle with the sun, you know, starting in the east and finishing in the west, and giving a full night cycle as well, right? So that's exciting for a number of reasons. Basically, the idea with the new time of day is the player spawns in one of 4 different quadrants, either dawn, noon, dusk, or nighttime, right? And they spawn in, and then the clock ticks forward approximately 6 hours to the end of the game, right? So if you finish early, you obviously won't get to see the full cycle, but if you run out of time, you get to see the full 6-hour cycle, right? So during that time, the sun is moving along along the sky. You've got different lighting effects. River City, it's kind of our first attempt at it, so it's pretty simple. It's basically just a simple 24 hours, which is cool in itself. But moving forward, some of the newer levels, Forest Colony maybe, certainly Alpine Peaks, we're going to have stuff like fog rolling in. You know, we can even do like a rainstorm at dusk or something like that. Whatever we want to do, right? That's up to us. So yeah, that's basically where all the alternate levels come in, right? So you know, users are familiar with Frozen City Night, River City Night, all those different little tweaks and changes, right? Now we're going to be able to roll them all into one level, which is really nice for us because it's less bug fixes. Of course, you know, you only have to fix one map rather than 2 different maps. But also it gives us a lot more freedom, right? It's dynamic, so we can have fog come in through the lake or over a lake or something like that in the middle of the game, which is quite unique, right? So quite exciting for the user.
What about dropships? How many are going to be in the level?
Oh yeah, dropships. That's right. So the new River City, of course, has the dropship spawn, which is unique to the pickup games. You know, we've had it in Community Warfare since December, but you know, it's a really nice little touch to have. It doesn't really add anything to the gameplay for pickup games, but basically you fly in on your dropship when you spawn into the match, and the players get to start from there. And so yeah, a regular pickup game's got 12 versus 12, so that means 3 dropships aside, so 6 dropships altogether. And of course that, you know, leaves open the opportunity to do respawns and stuff like that. Not saying that it's going to happen in Assault, but some of the new game modes we're coming up with, you know, can include that too, right? It gives us the option, so that's a nice little feature to add.
So do you have a favorite map?
Yes, my personal favorite map is Terra Firma. I know that there are a lot of complaints about the gameplay side of things, but if we're only talking about visual alone, Terra Firma, when it's done, we really achieve what we set out to do. It has so much contrast, it has so much ambience, it has so much atmosphere. The oozing, glowing lava, you know, against the dark sky. I think it's just visually stunning.
Yeah, Terra Firma is a really cool map. A lot of users kind of compare it to Lord of the Rings and Mordor and stuff like that. I don't know where they get that from personally. I think it looks totally different. Just kidding. But Terra Firma is a really cool one. I think that Viridian Bog, though, offers users a really unique experience as well. It's one of the first maps that we got to do really dense foliage. Of course, it still got the breakable trees, but other than that, it's basically got all the you know, bells and whistles of a really densely packed forest, with also a really cool element of having the water all over the place too, right? So that's quite unique as well.
And what are your favorite environments to work on? Which do you like, space more, the vegetation?
That's kind of tough. It's kind of like trying to pick what's your favorite child. But anyway, I like anything that has a lot of different varieties because it just makes my job a lot more enjoyable because every day is different. Having said that, I think city type environment is what I enjoy the most because there's just different levels of details. There's the water, there's the terrain, there's the boulders, there's buildings, there's different vegetations. So city type of environments is really my favorite.
And Dennis mentioned that you learned quite a bit of architect from
He did?
Making
okay. Well, I guess not just architecture specifically. I mean, when I first started here, I barely knew any of the terms that he threw at me. Pretty much I used to just give him like a blank face. But slowly over time, I started learning, and then I also started remembering what things are. So I do learn a lot from him, and then really what he encourages us to do is open your eyes, look around you, and then really remember. So these days, really, if you want something, we would just have a quick sit down, and then I kind of know what he wants. And then, so we don't have to spend too much time talking about what he wants, because I basically know what visualization that he has.
What about you, Ryan?
Yeah, well, for me, my answer is basically the complete opposite of Viona's. Cities are great, but you know, my favorite type of stuff to work on is natural environments and stuff like that. I'm being a Vancouver boy, I'm basically born and raised to go hiking and stuff like that. So you know, I'm out canoeing or hiking basically 2 or 3 times a week. So I get an opportunity to experience all that nature has to offer here in Vancouver, and then take all that knowledge and apply it to you know, what you see in MechWarrior Online, right? So you know, a lot of the stuff on the outside of the city, the boulders and stuff like that, it's kind of, that's my home turf, right? So I love, you know, adding little details in, adding little plants tucked along the rocks and stuff like that. So yeah, that's really what I got a kick out of.
Well, that's all the questions I have. Thank you very much for taking your time here.
You're very welcome. It's been fun.
And thank you very much for watching. See you in the next vlog. Bonsoir. Special thank you to the staff behind the camera. Okay.